Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Karate America Community Livestream. I'm Mrs. Quirk, and with me tonight is Mr. Quirk. He is not only one of the owners of Karate America, Pewaukee, Brookfield, and Worldwide, but he's also our most experienced instructor. So he's here tonight for the Ask an Instructor Anything. And if you have your questions just lined up and stacked up, I'm looking for somebody who can challenge him and stump him with something that he doesn't know in his 30 plus years of teaching martial arts and teaching instructors, teaching students of all ages. So it should be a really fun conversation tonight. We're looking to make this your live stream. So what do you want to know from a Karate America martial arts instructor? We're going to get into it in just a minute. We're really excited to have everybody here on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. So give us a thumbs up in the comments if you are liking the earlier time. Those of us like this guy right here that likes to get to bed early, I'm liking the 8 o'clock start time. We listen to a lot of feedback from our viewers, our parents, our families, and this is us responding to what most people want. So here we are on our new night, new time. Super, super excited to have everybody here. If you are watching us on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to our channel.
Close to our goal.
What's that?
We're close to our goal. subscribers.
We are. We have 89 subscribers on our little yet mighty YouTube channel. So we really love to get to 100 subscribers. We just need 11 people to hit the subscribe button. It's free. It takes like a second and a half. And if you're watching on YouTube, on the bottom right-hand side corner, there's a red word that says subscribe. And you can click there and you're subscribed to our channel. You'll get our notifications and all of our content, of course. And we'd really love to get to 100 subscribers by the end of March. I was actually looking, I was telling Mr. Quirk this, we were looking at our analytics the other day, and 70% of people that watch us on YouTube are not subscribed. So come on, guys, give us some support. Get us to that 100, by the end of March. It'll be super exciting. For those of you who don't know and you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're on Facebook, I believe it's in the comments right above my head. You can go to, I think it's streamyard.com/Facebook. And that's how you actually, it's a safety precaution for us, for safety for our families and people that watch the live stream, that you actually get verified through Facebook. And then the other good part of that is I can see you and I can see your name when you leave comments and questions in the chat. You don't just come up as generic Facebook user, you come up with your name and we can address you by your name. I know you can see your name on Facebook, but we can't see your name on the stream unless you go and verify through that StreamYard. What's that?
We won't be able to actually see them, but we'll see.
Don't worry, we can't see you. No. It's your name and your and we can actually address you by your name instead of hey Facebook user on Facebook. If you're watching through and you're signed in through YouTube, you're all good. You'll be able to like and comment on our stream tonight through YouTube. So a couple announcements to go through. First, we have our underbelt graduation and black belt star test coming up on April 24th. It's always an exciting time. We're really looking forward to it. If you have any questions about if you or your student are graduating, what you need to do, what steps you need to go through, what pieces you haven't quite completed yet, make sure you follow up with your instructor and your team at your academy. I'm sure they'll be able to help you out. And we do have information on the KA app. We have summer camp coming up. Yes, we are seeing here in southeastern Wisconsin, we're seeing green grass. Today I saw some violets coming up in my mom's yard. So spring is upon us. We have robins. We're very excited about that. And right after our very short spring in Wisconsin, we're going to have summer. And we're having an amazing summer camp planned this year. We have some spots left at our Brookfield location. So get on that. If your camper is not registered, make sure you go on the KA app, and the registrations are coming in fast and furious. So if you want your camper to spend their summer on purpose with our amazing team at Camp Inspire, make sure you get on the app and get them registered. We also still have spots left at our Pewaukee location. Our Pewaukee Camp is going to be so special this summer. We have a great team. We have some amazing programs for kids. So if you know anybody, anybody who needs something amazing for their kiddo to do this summer, and they are in the Pewaukee, Waukesha, Sussex, Delafield, that whole Lake Country area, they can do no better for the summer than Camp Inspire at our Pewaukee location. And last but not least, Mr. Hansen held me accountable last week and called me the next day after the live stream. I was like, Mrs. Quirk, did you know that you got the date wrong on the merch sale? And I was like, no, I did not. So I had the date wrong. Doing a retraction here. Our merch sale starts the week of April 25th, not 5th. So I knew there was a 5 in there, but it is the end of April. So right after graduation, we're going to be starting our summer merchandise sale. T-shirt days are coming up. Most of our students know, for those of you who don't, students can wear their Karate America t-shirt and their belt and their karate pants in class during our nice, hot, warm weather that we have coming up for class. And that's going to be both for our worldwide virtual students and for our in-person students at Brookfield and Pewaukee. So if you want to get the super cool designs that are coming out this summer, brand new, make sure you check those out on our Karate America app at the end of April. So, Mr. Quirk.
Yes.
Welcome to the live stream. We got some thumbs up already from Mrs. Pieper.
Mrs. Pieper. She's one of our big fans. She's one of our top fans.
I think, she needs to get like a badge or something. She's one of our top fans. She's always just like fearless there in the comments. I love it. Does not surprise me from Mrs. Pieper, to be honest. We have Ms. Hansen here on the stream. Good to have you, ma'am. I agree, Mrs. Pieper. We're really, really looking forward to summer here in southeastern Wisconsin. So, Mr. Quirk, welcome to the stream. Thanks for being on tonight. this is, in the past, we've had Ask Me Anything from our instructors. And tonight, that seems to be a really popular thing for our families, our students, grandparents, anybody in the KA community watching, because it's always fascinating to just kind of go behind the scenes a little bit and find out what's going on in the mind of an instructor. What do you see and know and hold that we don't? You have 30 plus years of instructing experience. And I was trying to think today if there's any class you haven't taught, like from orientation the whole way up through like advanced degree black belts, right? So you've taught pretty much little ninjas, young achievers.
And the funny thing is now teaching people to teach those classes is a whole different class.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to get us started off just with some questions that I have, some questions that people have shared with me over the months, over the years. And everybody at home, if you have a question, if you have an insight, a wonder, even just something to share and bounce off Mr. Quirk, this is your chance to actually communicate with one of our instructors and get the inside scoop on maybe something you've been wondering. There's no question that's too small or too weird, as long as it has to do with martial arts, Karate America classes, curriculum, and our organization. Sometimes, our parents and our students come up with the best questions that I never even think about. Like, well, why do you roll your sleeves up that much? Or anything like that is really, really cool. So please bring on your questions. So you go into the comments, leave a question for Mr. Quirk, and we will pop it up and talk about it.
With the one caveat that I've been doing it for over 30 years. So I know enough to know that I don't know a lot. So
right.
I know what I know well. So
well said. So one of the questions that we get is, do you have a favorite age or ability level as an instructor?
I mean,
and if so, why?
I definitely have a favorite age. My favorite age has always been kind of that 4, 5, 6-year-olds, probably the 5 and 6-year-olds specifically. I love working with that age group. There's almost no ego that gets in the way. They're so full of life and energy, and they'll just try. It's like I ask them so one of the best qualities a student can have for an instructor is to try. So most things that we do in martial arts are really difficult at the beginning, and we feel silly, we feel like we're not doing a good job at it. But that ability to try, if they can take that first step, I mean, we can get them to black belt. And that 5 to 6-year-old age, they're always smiling, they're always willing to try, and they like the games I play. I can make up really dumb games, and they're going to have fun with it no matter what. So,
is there any age or ability level that you find newer instructors are like hesitant or a little intimidated to teach?
I think little ninjas. I think they're
that's what I would say.
Usually the ones that people have the most fear with.
Yeah. Usually the eyes get a little bit big when it's like, okay, we're going to have you teach little ninjas. And it's like, I can teach adult class.
Well, it's funny because most of the time that fear comes from, what if they don't listen? And the instructors have this view in their mind that all these little kids are just going to run in opposite directions and nobody's going to listen to them. And I mean, that's never the case. We obviously, the way we teach them, so that doesn't happen, but that's a pretty big fear for most instructors.
We have Mrs. Jury here. We have great instructors, lots of young and upcoming leaders.
Your son specifically.
Yeah. We got a question here from Mrs. Pieper. What is the reason that a student turns away from instructor when putting on a new belt?
That is
interesting question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So traditionally it's just been a respect piece. When we turn around, we want to present ourselves in the best light or the best mental preparation to be able to learn. And if we come in and our uniform's hiked up or one sleeve is hiked up and I'm all disheveled, it's not a very respectful learning environment. It's just there's a piece of chaos there that makes it harder to learn. Mm-hmm. So to be respectful, we turn away from the instructor, and vice versa. The instructor would turn away too, refix themselves, and then turn back. It's more of just a resetting mentally. Mm-hmm. Great question. I don't get asked that one very often. Yeah.
Awesome question. Really specific question. I love it. Another piece that I know I hear often is, so for our bow, I know the bow and the salute in martial arts can be just a little bit different depending on different styles and different systems. And I've had people say, what are we supposed to maintain eye contact? Because I've heard that we do maintain eye contact. It's disrespectful to maintain eye contact. Do we bring the forehead down? Do we maintain? Mm-hmm. What do you tell people, like in our system, what is the brand standard for that bow? Not so much in and out of the academy door, but when, two martial artists are facing each other out on the mat.
Yeah. So it's a level of trust. So both are valid. So if I'm going to face off against an opponent, say I'm sparring, I'm going to keep my eyes up, and it's not necessarily disrespectful. It's just being aware. It's just being ready. So I bow usually to a 45 degrees, and I'll keep my eyes on the opponent. I can, though, with an instructor or another student, I can bow and I can lower my eyes because there's no chance of, being attacked or injury or self-defense situation. So generally the way we do it is we maintain eye contact because that's also, respectful, at least with our system.
Sure.
It's interesting though, because generally these small changes actually are different between each system.
Mm-hmm.
So you might go to a different school and they may bow differently. Some schools bow with a hand in front.
Sure. Can you speak to that? Because I think that's a really, really common, the closed fist with the hand in martial arts. I've even seen martial artists just out sort of like at restaurants and conferences, like greet each other if they know that it's another martial arts. It's sort of like, the people riding the Harleys have like the wave to each other. It's sort of that way to greet a martial artist. Can you speak a little bit to that and what that means?
So I'm not actually familiar with why each individual system does it. I know what it means in our system. In our system, it's really about, might is our power. Mm-hmm. This represents our training, and the open hand represents control of that power. So we never want to let that power obviously out if we don't need to.
Sure.
It's just a constant reminder that we are in control of our own training.
So we got a question here from Yazid's the Man on YouTube. When we do a high block, and then it's in two parts. When we do a high block, are we supposed to do it with a closed fist or open? Very specific technique question from this YouTube viewer.
That is a fantastic question. Yeah, so it can vary in different situations. Generally, we do it with an open hand. So when we do our high block, so a very traditional block is going to be a closed hand because that closed hand is going to it's going to make that whole arm more solid. An open hand, however, as we block, it's going to give us a little bit more length. And then it's going to actually allow us to grab after we do the block. So we can block and then we can clinch. So for you guys, when you guys are doing your 360-degree blocks, you're going to block with your hands open. A very traditional block, though, like if you're doing a form, a lot of times you'll have your hand closed because it's more traditional. So I like to think about traditional, hand closed versus practical, which is hand open. Great question.
From Miss Hanson, we have, what is your favorite move to teach?
Favorite move to teach or favorite move to do?
Let's do both. Shall we?
So, it's funny because my favorite move to teach is any move where that student's eyes light up, right? Where they're like, oh, I get it. And that can be something as simple as a punch, or it can be a kick. If it's a really athletic student, I love teaching jump spin kicks. It's always been one of my favorite kicks. Otherwise the other one would be probably turn side kick.
Okay.
Because I love the power that people can generate on turn side kicks. It's really cool.
Yeah. So I have a question here. Do instructors, so for our classes, right, we have usually parents, family members, people in the community out watching who maybe brought the students to class, or they're just members of the public, whatever, watching classes. Do instructors hear and notice people sitting in the gallery, moms, dads, grandparents, family members in the gallery? Does that matter when instructors teaching a class? Do they notice and absorb the gallery at all? And if so, talk about that.
Yes,
how does it play
100%.
into class?
So moms and dads, we do see you in the back. So a great instructor, whenever I was teaching, I knew everything that was happening in my academy. So I knew if a parent was on a phone, I knew if a parent was sitting on the front edge of the seat or they were leaned back. I knew if two parents were talking. I knew if parents were out on the lobby on phones. We track all of that because it's really, really important for the student's training, because we find a direct correlation. A parent that is engaged, even sitting back, a parent that's engaged with that body language, the students pick it up. And a student whose parent is engaged will stay with it longer and get more out of it than one who's not. I mean, we have some parents that do drop off, and I get it, right? With schedules and work, that happens. I would encourage those parents to try to come in because the students do see it.
Right. And
so, short answer is yes. I'm tracking it all. And we even track things like a great instructor will track, which parent brought the son or daughter in today, which grandma or grandpa brought the son or the student in today.
Yeah.
And does that change? And we're tracking all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I were talking earlier about this. I mean, even our team that works up in the front office, I know when I used to work in the front office and not on Gym 2 at Brookfield, I could hear it, but especially on Gym 1 or at a smaller school like Pewaukee, some of the other martial arts schools, that team of people working in the office and the instructors on the floor are really seeing literally everything. So we're tracking how families walk into the front door. Are they saluting? Are they smiling? Does somebody have some puffy eyes from maybe crying in the car, coming in disheveled, coming kind of slowly? Is mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever making a beeline up to me at the front counter to be like, oh, here's what happened in school today. And then trying to, get that information to the instructor in a timely way so that the instructor can kind of, sometimes they weave that into match chats, what's happened to the student in school that day, or what mom or dad or whoever the parent or family member might be is sitting with. And then also in the front office, I remember, watching the classes and seeing what was happening, like watching the gallery, watching the parents watch. And I used to sort of say, especially when I had newer, younger instructors, I would look up and, maybe out of like 15 parents, 13 would be with him or with her, and 2 were kind of distracted on their phones, walking around like, he's got 13 out of 15. And we talk about it afterwards. And the goal for the next time would be to up the effectiveness of the class to get all 15 or get 14, right? And so those things really, really matter when a student is asked to have a seat, when drills shift, looking at the parents and the family members and seeing if any of their body language changes. Do they like what's happening? Do they get and understand what's happening? To your point, are they taking calls or are they listening to what's being talked about in the mat chat? Because then the mat chats are going to make a lot more sense to some of the things that they're seeing talked about in class, and then taking it home and doing, the home karate work of using what was talked about in class that night at home. And I think a really interesting thing you said once was, a lot of parents, or some parents, don't know how to have that after the chat and the car ride on the way home. Or if it's a virtual or worldwide family, like, okay, your karate class is done. And I think most parents might be like, did you have fun? Was it good? What can you say about how to have an effective conversation with a student right after class to really maximize the reasons why they're there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Just coming back to what you said earlier about what we're tracking, a little hint for moms and dads: if the instructor ever comes to the back of the floor, like near you guys and stands, that's usually a good sign that maybe noise is getting a little bit too loud. So it's just a little secret insight really quick. Or, something is happening in that lobby area that may be distracting from class. So just hear us that we are watching at all times. As far as the car ride home, it is a fantastic chance to reinforce what happened in class. So here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is most parents, the reason they bring kids to martial arts isn't for the technique, right? It's not for the sidekick. No, very few parents. I don't think in 30 years, I've ever had a parent come to me and say, I just really want my kid to pivot. Right? or really just sidekick.
That's going to put them ahead in life.
Yeah, right. It's about the discipline, the respect, the confidence, the learning that they're gaining about themselves. So these are the things that talk about on the car ride at home, because unfortunately, those things can be harder to pinpoint during class. So what quite often what a parent will do is the only thing they really know how to talk about is the physical technique that happened in class. So a lot of times, there may be critique that happens in class, like, hey, I saw you not pivoting today, or, why weren't you listening? Or I saw that you had to have a seat. And it really focuses more kind of around that negative than it does around the positive. So with that being said, the hint on the car ride home is talk about what was effective. Like, what were you, Sam, what were you really proud of that you did in class today? That is a great question to ask. What's one thing that you're really proud of?
I love that.
Yeah. And quite often, especially when you're first starting out with your child, they'll say, I don't know. I don't know. For our team, we know that's a rescue question. Most people, when they say, I don't know, they just want someone else to give the answer. And as a mom or dad, if you jump right in and you try to pull more out of them, it's just rescuing them. So the first question is, what are you really proud of today? If they say, I don't know, say, well, what's one thing you do know? and start the conversation there, as opposed to just jumping in and say, well, were you proud of your pivot? Were you proud of your kick? Were you proud of your listening? Don't necessarily give them options.
So we got another question here from Miss Hanson. What prompted you to switch from implicit to explicit purpose and values?
What prompted it? So I first went down to a place, Nick Cirillo's in Chicago. I had heard that there was a seminar down there, and this guy, Rudy Mick, was doing some training. Mr. Reed actually introduced it. He said, you have to come to this seminar. It's some really great information. I went down and I saw it down there, a culture that was really on purpose. It was explicit. And I said, there's nothing they're doing here that's any better than what we were doing. They were just being more explicit about it.
Yeah.
And I listened to the way their staff talked, or their team talked, and I listened to the answers they gave. And they were purpose and values driven answers. And I was like, we got to do that. We have to do the same thing. Because here's the thing about purpose. For me, our purpose is my purpose. It's where our karate school started. So for us, it wasn't necessarily about finding the purpose. It was just about uncovering what was already there.
Yeah.
So the process we went through was who am I, and how does that show up in the karate school?
Yeah. And I love the question coming from Ms. Hanson. She's one of our team members, but we've talked about this before. I think a lot of things that on the surface seem to be like, ugh, do we need to get explicit about this? Can't we just kind of, go out there and be awesome and have fun and be ourselves in our work? And we, the saying discipline is freedom. So when we get explicit and when we hold ourselves accountable, we just want to go out and be good people. No, here's our purpose and here are our 9 values. And oh, by the way, they're not just values, they're behaviors. And oh, by the way, we track how we behave our values every day. I mean, that completely shifts the conversation, both internally and externally with the rest of the team. And I believe it's really one of the reasons why, even over the last 10-ish years that we've been doing that MIC work, so many of our families are like, wow, the way you guys communicate, the way that you put yourselves out there to the community is so amazing. And it's just sort of turned up the volume and the intensity on that purpose and those values and that culture that's always been there for us. So it's been extremely powerful.
Well, and on that note, just really quick too, it's great because in the martial arts, we define, I know we talk about the technique not being important, the life skills are important, but the technique actually is important too to us. So we've defined down to a degree on what a certain technique should look like, where our pivot should be. But most people don't necessarily go to that same level with purpose and values, right? Like what is acceptable behavior? Who are we explicitly? And that was that part of that process.
Yeah. Or even in our personal lives for that matter.
Yeah. Right.
In our families and our personal lives, same thing. Yep. So we have another Hanson family member coming in here. You have 9 values. How do you communicate these values into the larger community for a child who's in elementary age? Great question.
That is
and I love that you know that we have 9 values, Mr. Hanson.
Yes. Because that was one of the quizzes, wasn't it? One of the trivia pieces. So how do we do it? So again, likening to martial arts, the first step is we just have to memorize, right? So even if we don't liken it to martial arts, the first thing that I can invite all the families to do, memorize the values.
Yep.
So if I don't know them, if I don't have them memorized, I can't use them. They may be implicitly in my mind, but until I have them memorized, until I speak them, they're not real. And I can't speak them and turn them into behaviors if I don't even know what they are. So step 1, I know we talked to some of our families about this. Step 1, memorize. And here's another great car ride home, another thing to talk about, name a value. Right? What is one of the values? Second question to that, a little higher level would be, how did that value show up for you in class today? Or how didn't it show up for you in class today? So level 1 is memorize. Level 2 is speak out loud, speak the values out loud. And then number 3, start to look for how did they show up in class. And then, so later on, we start talking about how the values interact too, but that's a little higher level. So
yeah, Mr. Hanson saying, thank you for shifting the values to behaviors. And Ms. Hanson's coming and saying they have a copy of the purpose and values in their karate space at home. Well, they should. They're blue uniforms now. So
right.
I would expect nothing less. That's amazing. And, one of the things that I've been toying around with, we had a family conscious communication seminar a couple years back before the pandemic hit, and we could all do things in person. And we had a magnet, for some of the tools, and families were like, "This is great. We put the magnet right on our refrigerator." And you and I actually, Mr. Quirk, that is the only magnet that we have on our refrigerator is our conscious communication tools. But it's like, it is really powerful. I mean, it sounds so simplistic. And I remember it was something like at the last minute, I was like, I don't know, we'll do a magnet or something. And that turned into being this great tool that people just love. I mean, we all know, I think, that we spend most of the time in our kitchen, and it just seems to be sort of like a hub of activity. And so if anybody's interested in possibly us getting our values on magnets for our families, let me know in the comments. Leave me a little, I don't know if we have a refrigerator emoji or not, but leave me a thumbs up or something for a value.
There you go.
If you can find a refrigerator magnet, that's great. I don't know if there's one out there, but
emoji, right?
Leave me a comment and let me know, because we are really looking for feedback from you all, from our families and our students and our community, what's going to make your journey more effective. So if you want some magnets for purpose and values, I think that would be a great idea. Let me know. I think that would be cool. Let me know if you think the same way. Mrs. Pieper saying you're giving away secrets, Ms. Hanson. Yes. Mrs. Pieper was asking, what is one specific habit that you would encourage students to implement daily? Another good question.
I mean, just from a pragmatic standpoint, is exercise or workout. Find some way to fit in your martial arts every day. I mean, it's like, what's one specific habit? There's so many that we need to be successful, right? But find a way to practice. And here's the problem. Most people, and a lot of parents, at least for beginner students, the son or daughter is doing a 30-minute karate class. When they go home, they're not taking time to do like a 30-minute practice at home. So right away, they think that the student isn't, practicing. But practice for a kid looks a little bit differently. For me, if they're walking down the hallway and they're throwing kicks every once in a while, or you see them stand up and they're, throwing a punch while they're, doing some activity, those are little micro types of practice that actually do benefit them long term. So as far as the practice goes, make it playful, make it fun. Don't make it this thing where you have to get your uniform on. You have to start exactly at 6:30, and then you got to practice for 30 minutes. And if you're not sweating, you're not practicing. It's not going to be realistic for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. We got a yes to the purpose and values magnets from Mrs. Bray. Mrs. Jerry sharing, they don't stick to stainless steel. It looks like we have to do a little research if there's anything out there that will stick to stainless steel. I don't know.
I'd love to give one more really quick to Mrs. Pieper too, because I think that is such a great question. Yeah. We talked about with values, how values aren't real unless they're practiced. So saying the values out loud is important. So for any student out there, your self-talk will make or break you. So if you internally, every day, the habit that you can have is watch your self-talk. What are you saying? What are we saying to ourselves?
Yeah.
Am I telling myself I'm dumb? Am I telling myself I'm not good at something? That negative talk it'll destroy you. So
yeah. And that's for students of all ages.
That's everybody. Yes.
That's a big deal for adults as well as for kids. Sometimes more so. Because it really, to your point, it really gets embedded there like ruts. And we don't even realize that we're fulfilling our prophecy of what we say to ourselves. So that's very, very important. I agree. I'd like you to talk a little bit about class size. So this is something that, over the years, things have come and gone in the field of martial arts, big class sizes, small class sizes. Here's what odd numbers, even numbers, it is one of the first things that we usually hear from parents, right? Asking about class size and instructor to student ratio. So talk to us about class size in martial arts.
I think you're right. I think class size can be a sticking point for parents. And generally they don't like the answer that I give, but the answer actually is bigger class sizes. And the reason that may be counterintuitive is because most people compare class sizes for karate to like math or reading, when it's much more individual and they need that hands-on attention in order to progress their learning. But martial arts, and we talked about the things the instructors hold, and I'll talk about that in a minute. With martial arts, they learn from each other. It's really, really important that the students have that environment that's fun and exciting, but where they're actually learning from the students standing next to them. So there are a countless number of times, look, when a student makes a mistake, I know they're making a mistake. And when I don't correct them, I'm not correcting them on purpose. And the reason I'm not correcting them is because I want them to wake up and look around and ideally start to make those corrections on their own. Because if I'm there every time saying, no, you forgot to pivot. Nope, turn your heel, down. It just sets up an environment where they're always going to need someone to correct them. So like I said, the technique is important. In the end, they have to do the technique correct, but I'm not there trying to teach technique. I'm there using the technique to try to teach them bigger skills. So with that being said,
I think that's powerful. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm not there to teach them technique. The technique is just the train or just the method that we're using to teach them the greater life skills.
Yeah, I think that would blow some people's minds, because it's like, why go to karate for my kid to learn karate? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And there's just so much depth and complexity underneath the initial technique of martial arts. So
yeah, well, when they hear karate, they think technique, but it's just so much bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
But to the class sizes, so the kids need energy, they need excitement, they need their peers around them. Because here's what I know: if they're having fun, guess what? They're going to come back. And if they come back, then I can change their life. But I've done experiments. I've done this for 30 years. I've taken just 2 kids. They were really successful. I took them, pulled them out of class, and just did private lessons with them. And within 4 months, they quit.
Yeah.
And the reason they quit is that there was no energy, no excitement of the other kids around them. So, and there is a fine balance, right? Too big is too big, but a lot of that is based on what the instructor can handle.
Do you see, what is the difference for you in teaching adults versus kids? Is there any difference from an instructor's point of view in how you teach adults and kids? What's the same and what's different?
Yeah, there's a lot same and a lot different, actually. At the core, adults are big kids too, which is great. They're just kids that grow up into bigger bodies, right? But this is one of the things that I teach my instructors. So one of our communication tools is 745-48. So when we communicate with somebody, 745-48 adds up to 100%. So 7% of my communication is the actual words I'm saying. 45% of my communication, you're actually watching my body language, and 48% you're listening to my tone. So all that together kind of coalesces into the total communication. Well, with little ninjas, the real young kids, they don't really listen to our words all that much. They're really watching body language and listening to tone. On the flip side, adults really want the explanation. They want the why. They want to know the intricacies. They want to know how things fit together. So when I'm working with an adult, there's a lot more audio that I'll use when I teach, a lot more verbal.
You've been teaching now for over 3 decades. Have you seen changes?
Oh, man.
There's another
yeah, right.
What changes, if any, what's changed and what's the same in martial arts students and martial arts classes in your time since you started?
Great question. So what's the same? I think, whenever a student comes to us or whenever a family comes to us, there's only a set number of reasons that they come to us, right? And those reasons haven't really changed over the decades. It's more confidence, it's more discipline, it's more, more respect. I want them to do better at school. It's never been about the martial arts. Even a funny story, I'll have a parent call up on the phone, and sometimes one of the first questions they ask is, do you break boards? And to me, that's always always an interesting question, because it leads to, what do you really want? Right. And generally when they want to break boards, what they really want is they just want their son or daughter to be confident. Maybe something's happening at school. Right. So the reasons that people,
or something like that.
Yeah. So the reasons people come to us haven't really changed. For us, what has changed is the age groups. So when I first came up, and the makeup of class too, when I first came up, it was a lot more teenagers, a lot more kind of that 8 to 15 to 17 age range, a lot of males, not as many females. And now it's actually, as far as the gender goes, just genders across the board, it's much more balanced. And the age, though, is really aged down. So our biggest program now is our 5, 6, 7-year-old program. So
one thing
that's a big change.
Yeah, and we were talking with a parent several months ago about this, and it kind of correlates with what you're saying with that younger age group being probably our biggest age group now. And I even know from my own personal experience, probably 15, 20 years ago, talking about martial arts for kids, there was still sort of this convincing that had to be done for many, many parents.
Yeah.
It was, they're going to get violent. They just had this sort of, they're going to use it to beat up their brothers and sisters. That's not really what we do. And it was this like, thanks, I'll think about it. It was still a little fringe. It was still a little weird compared to like, soccer and scouts, and basketball and t-ball, which is like, oh, sure, everybody does that. Martial arts was a little odd, to be honest. And then what I've seen recently is, talking to younger families, like specifically millennial families and parents, it's like they're just into it. They're just like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And starting to have that conversation about like, well, here's what we actually do. And your kids would really benefit. And they're like, yep, no, I totally get it. Where do I sign? So seeing this generational shift, from parents about 20 years ago when it was like, are they going to be a bunch of like, hiya, and board breaking, screaming. And, and some of these younger, I think really more, these parents are a little bit more savvy now and they've been exposed to it, right? It's not so new. And I think that there's just for the really younger kids, I think there's more of an onus for these younger parents and younger families to get their kids involved earlier, because it is about, how to prepare them for school, how to get along in a team, how to take instructions, how to make friends, how to stick up for themselves. For the school age kids, it's like, parents want them to make the decisions that their families would make when the families aren't standing right there with them.
Right.
As they get older, transitioning into who to be friends with, what peer group to make decisions about. I mean, families today, in my experience, are just like getting it like that. And they're like, yep, I got it. Versus before, it used to be sort of trying to explain that to them. So that's an interesting shift for me.
Yeah. And to that point, I often tell parents, I say, would you rather wait until your son or daughter is 15 to start having somebody reinforce and help teach respect and confidence? Or would you rather have them do that at 4? Because a lot of parents say, what time, what's a good age to get my son or daughter in? And I would be like, as soon as possible. Yeah. Because we can start reinforcing those skills at a young age. They will take root and they will, they'll flourish.
Mm-hmm. When you were a student, so before you were an instructor and before you had an instructor lens, when you were just a student, I mean, what was the most fun part about taking class? Was it the friendships? Was it the technique? What was it that you just loved about taking class as a student?
I loved all of it. I did. There wasn't much that I didn't like. I mean, to that point, there were so many great memories. There was, one of my best friends at the time, I actually took class with that person, ended up gaining just a lot of my closest friends now are in the martial arts. The relationships have been huge. For me, I always loved that. I loved that concept that I could be smart, I could be individual, and I could do it in a group setting. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people around that were supporting me, but I knew that my success depended on how hard I personally worked. So if I wanted to go home and practice for 3 hours, I could do that. I could come back in and I could excel, but I could still do it within, the community and the group environment. Mm-hmm. And for me, when I first started sparring, I picked it up like that. And so that was always a successful piece for me too.
Yeah. So the sparring, so the sparring piece, especially in our Karate America system, talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's something that sometimes is misunderstood. Usually my experience is, parents see like the gear and and say your child is going to go out and start sparring, when they go to purple belt, it's like, oh, it sounds like fighting. It sounds like punching. It sounds like violence. And even just as students, it's like, sometimes it's not something that people are necessarily looking forward to. For a number of different reasons. So talk about what sparring actually is in our system and what place it has in our curriculum. Like, what are we trying to teach and accomplish through sparring at Karate America?
So sparring has a couple really, really important physical pieces, but it also has some really important emotional and mental pieces to it too. So from the physical standpoint, so first of all, sparring is a game of tag. Sparring is not fighting. The intention isn't to hit somebody hard enough to hurt them or knock them out. The intention is it's about closing distance, and it's about timing. Because see, a lot of people, when they're in a self-defense situation, if someone comes at them, they're so not used to it. It's so foreign to them that the average person will lock up.
Yeah. Freeze.
So they'll freeze, right? So sparring allows us to train someone coming at us, throwing a technique, with the added benefit that in the moment it's safe, right? Because we have gear on, we have mats, we have instructors there, but it allows us to practice that mentally, that physical part of timing and closing the distance.
kind of that muscle memory of just reacting, not
Totally.
like somebody's going to throw some exotic technique in a real self-defense situation, but sometimes all a person needs is a couple milliseconds, and I either freeze or I react. And sometimes that can be the difference between somebody staying safe and not. It's a great point.
And here's what we're looking for. So the first time I spar, I get hit and it's like, what just happened? I don't even know where that came from. Right. Then the next step is I see it, I at least see it coming, but I still get hit. But at least now I can see it coming. And the next step above that is I can see it coming and I can block it. I can stop it from hitting me. And then the next step above that is I can actually start to strike back before I'm hit. So there's kind of this progression of this unconscious, I don't know what happened, to this being able to take initiative and act and not just react. And there's mental benefits too, by the way, but that was just the physical side of it.
Yeah. Mrs. Jury is asking, what made you decide to open your own academy? Mrs. Jury, this is like its own episode. It's a great question. I love it.
So, yeah, how to even answer that one? Well, I just knew I always wanted to do it. At the time I was running 2 academies up in the Madison area, and it just came to a point where it was time for me to leave and separate. And Mrs. Quirk and I, we always said we want an environment where the team is first, where the staff is first, even more so than the student. We want to create an environment where we treat staff the way they deserve to be treated. Because I know this, if we treat our staff really well, then they're going to treat our students really well too. So that was kind of the genesis. We wanted to come to a different situation, a different scenario, and really live purpose. I mean, looking back on it now, it was really all about finding and living our purpose.
Yeah. And we looked around too. So I've told people this before. We had so many choices of where to go. It was like the country, the US, like, where do we go? And we were thinking about going to Colorado. We were thinking about going down to the Virginia area. We were thinking about going to the Carolinas. I was rallying for Pennsylvania. We had a couple of ideas. I mean, truly, like, where do we go? And we didn't even know this was like, whatever this was, 20 plus years ago. So we didn't have a lot of the smartphone GPS, Google Maps technology that we have now. So we had like fold out maps, and somebody had mentioned it's called Brookfield, and we like drove out in our neon, I think, in on 94. And I just remember seeing the water tower, the water thing that says Brookfield. I'm like, oh, here it is. And we like got off of 94 and we're driving around on Blue Mound Road, like, okay, this is, I mean, we had like absolutely no idea. So
and it was Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed was a big piece of that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mr. Reed, if it hadn't been for Mr. Reed, we would not have found Brookfield. We would not be in Brookfield. We wouldn't be in our location in Ruby Isle. So it is quite a story. It's probably like a 3 or 4 part live stream episode, what we went through to get Brookfield open. But we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary here in 2023 at Brookfield location, which
I think we were like 24 or something like that.
So I were 20.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
I just remember sitting down with the landlord, and the landlord's like, "I'm not signing a 5-year lease with this 22 or 23 or whatever it was."
I think we're 25 or something like that.
Maybe something like that. I don't know. Mr. Reed actually came in and he helped, calm the landlord down, and eventually we, were able to make it happen. So, yeah, Mr. Ruby he's amazing. He's the best.
Yeah. But we did really, I mean, to your point, the Karate America system, because I lived in Pennsylvania, and that's where I first came to work in the martial arts and the field of martial arts. And I knew a lot of different school owners and really had the privilege of being exposed to a lot of different martial arts systems all across the country. And Karate America in Wisconsin had at that time, and still to a certain extent, just a major reputation for just being one of the powerful, big leading martial arts systems in the United States. And Mr. Reed's name was known everywhere in martial arts. And the Karate America guys. What's that?
It still is.
And still is.
Yeah.
And so, karate, the schools that you had out in the Madison area were highly, highly successful. And so it was quite a big leap to be a big fish in a little pond. I tell my friends that you actually were like on all these commercials. Like, I would be watching TV And people are like, what is that Mr. Quirk? I'm like, yep, that's Mr. Quirk. Like I mean, it was commercials. It was just a saturated, culture out there where everybody in the Madison area trained at Karate America. It was the big powerhouse martial arts system. And then to leave that and come here,
and we weren't.
Nobody knew us.
We weren't.
And it was us in a car, and it was different. And it was a challenge.
Our first school, when we opened it, it was in Ruby Isle. It was one of the temporary spaces down the way. And I think, Ms. Quirk, I think it was like 3 mats or 4 mats and 4 chairs.
Yep.
And I think one of our big concerns is what if
I think it was like 4 chairs.
Yeah. What if a 5th person comes in and wants to sit down? And we're like,
I was like, what if we get 5 parents? We only have 4 chairs. And you're like, they're going to have to stand. Like, we literally couldn't afford 5 chairs. So that's it. There's many stories. Our staff are like, oh, again, with the stories of, like us walking uphill both ways in a blizzard to start our karate school type thing. But
they're fun stories. Good memories, though.
They are good. They are good memories. But yeah, definitely, I would say, looking back now, we didn't have necessarily these words for it at the time, but it was purpose, it was values. And where do we make a place where we are successful, we are professional, and we treat people really, really well? And know those 2 things do not have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
Your thing has always been the nice guy doesn't have to finish last and get pushed around. I don't have to be a jerk in order to be highly, highly successful and sophisticated in business. And we've just always kind of pushed back against that, against that narrative that we would have to somehow sacrifice one for the other.
Yep.
And I think
that's why
that purpose and values in our team today.
And that's why the values and the purpose have been so important to us, because now that we're explicit in our values, we know who to bring onto our team and who not.
Yeah.
It becomes really easy to hire and select our team. So
Mrs. Pieper is asking, it said that at some point every student, black belts, want to quit for one reason or another. Did you experience that? And how did you fight through it? If not, what's the advice for those going through that? Great question.
That is a good question. Yeah. So every student does at some point want to quit. For me, martial arts has been my life since I was 15 years old. So I've definitely had them. For me, it wasn't necessary. It was more of a burnout phase than it was a quit phase. So, cause it was something I was doing every day, all day. I mean, when we first opened Brookfield, you remember I was down there at 8:00 in the morning, and there were times when you'd call me at 11:30 at night and you'd say, "Are you coming home?" And it was
like at all,
right. Cause it was like that all day, every day trying to build the school. So for me, there was definitely burnout phases. I think I've gone through burnout like 7 times or at some point, but the point is, it's like, is it important or isn't it? And if it's important, just remember, I call it anchoring. Remember the times that resonate, that show that importance, and they help me through the times when maybe I'm, lagging a little bit. So I know tomorrow's another day. I know that if during those negative times, as long as I just keep moving, I will come out on the other side in a positive light. And it's happened every single time. We're going to experience burnout. We're going to experience, that concept that we want to quit. It's just, are we going to give into it? Because nothing successful ever happens if we give into that. The best things, I think most people would agree, the best things that have happened in our lives have happened because we've pushed through the difficult times.
Yeah. So, in this last year, we have our country, our world, our martial arts community, our field, our business has gone through a lot of changes. What do you think, if you had to talk about maybe the top 1 or 2 or 3 things that are different now in our martial arts and our martial arts academies than it was a year ago, or maybe even 13 months ago? What's changed now post-pandemic for martial arts? Where do you see changes maybe leading our field even?
So in general, you mean just the field in general?
Yeah. How is life different for martial arts instructors, martial arts schools now than, in February 2020?
Yeah, I think unfortunately I think the stat is somewhere around 40% of all martial arts schools have closed over the pandemic, which it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And, at the same time, we have to be able to adapt. We have to be able to shift. It is the martial arts mindset of what am I given? What am I presented with? How do I shift to make the best out of it and learn from it? Which, just as an aside, I think it's the fact that these kids nowadays are going through this pandemic is actually going to be quite amazing for them. They are learning things and they're gaining skills that we as adults never had to deal with.
Yep.
So there are actually going to be a lot of really great skills that people are coming out of the pandemic with.
Mm-hmm.
And just the choice for us to acknowledge and focus on the positives versus the negatives. I think one of the really big positives is just community. I think people are really waking up to how important community and connection are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the great things that we've done is just, that's what our academy is about. It's about community. It's about connection. It's about purpose and values.
Yep. Mr. Pieper saying he teaches virtually now. Indeed. We have our Karate America Worldwide. And I think one of the interesting things about the worldwide classes, you talked earlier about like the larger classes and the energy. And we definitely have sort of a style and a culture and a brand at Karate America, and it's highly successful and people love it. And there are also people who might be, I'm hearing from people that really enjoy virtual classes, right?
Yeah.
They enjoy, for whatever reason, they like not the distraction. They like, no thanks to the driving, no thanks to the, 5, 10, 15, 20 people standing around me. They, for whatever reason, their personality and learning style is, I want to do this, in my living room and having this one-on-one. And I think that it's really exciting because you and I have talked over the years about, this is the formula for our culture, our vibe, our classes. If we change it and we start catering to like, introverts or people that don't like that big feeling, we don't want to do that, right? Because that's not our brand. That's not what we offer. And now I think with worldwide and virtual, it's like, we're starting to be able to do both. So not only hitting people that live in different states and different time zones in different countries, but even different personality styles that before might have come to a big karate class and been like, oh, this is a little much for me, or, it's a little far to drive or whatever. I don't like walking into a dark parking lot at night, after my karate class. Well, now all those people, for all those reasons, the answer is yes, I can participate and be a part of this community. And that for me is really special and really exciting.
I'm hearing that from instructors. I'm hearing that from instructors too. I've spoken to at least 3 instructors probably within the past month who have said, I like teaching virtual better than I like teaching in person. And it's like, so that's so exciting because now we have this whole avenue for people that's the form of communication they enjoy. And now they have an outlet to be able to actually change the world.
Right.
And how great is that?
Absolutely. And that exact concept that you're talking about, and I know we referenced this a couple episodes ago, but I think you probably remember this, was probably better than me, but there was a period in time where people were like, we're not going to teach martial arts to kids. That's ridiculous.
Or
you know what I
women,
mean? And it was instructors were
right.
freaked out about teaching kids. It's like, I'm going to teach kids karate. We're going to have tiny little uniforms. Like what? That was the craziest. That was never going to happen ever. Right. And instructors didn't want to teach children. And then certainly, maybe we're going to teach, to your point, teenagers, but we're not going to teach 7-year-olds, 4-year-olds. What do you well, and now that's just the world. So it's like everybody right now that's like, what's this virtual worldwide thing? It's like, just sit tight. If we do it right, I think this could really open up this entire other aspect of martial arts that before was unthinkable, right? So that's really, really.
There's a kid out there right now, or there's an adult out there right now who can't drive to one of our schools, who maybe can't, they don't have a car, or they can't get out of their house, or there's not even a school near them. There's somebody out there right now that needs what we're doing. And for me, the fact that virtual is going to allow us to connect with those people, with them, I think is fantastic.
Absolutely.
To again, change the world.
Yep. Mr. Jeske saying, improvise, overcome, adapt, and achieve the goals. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Hansen is saying, we love our virtual class here in Lake Tomahawk, way up north. Too far to drive to Brookfield twice a week.
It's a perfect example. We have the Hansen family who, Mr. and Mrs. Hansen, not the Mr. Hansen and Ms. Hansen at our school, right? They wouldn't be able to participate in our program, and they're so amazing. And to have you guys part of our community is, we never would have dreamed this possible 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and that point right there, what you're saying about like, hey, there are all these people who can really benefit from martial arts, and what's holding them back is distance or a big noisy class full of other people and distractions. And that used to be said about, kids. and women and people who weren't world champion athletes. And the argument used to be like, well, we can't teach those people. And there were people, I mean, Bruce Lee he was actually sort of like a civil rights activist for the martial arts field and really cracked that all open and said, no, martial arts can be for everybody. And for decades, that was pushed back against, like, no, it's for the elite. It's for men with a military background. And look at us today. I mean, literally, I don't know that any of us would be here without those pioneers that said, nope, we're going to teach it to 4-year-olds. We're going to teach it to women. We're going to teach it to people who aren't world-class athletes. There are pieces of the martial arts that these people deserve to have their lives changed. And do we have to make some adjustments? Sure. But if we're good enough, professionals and instructors, we can do it. It's just a matter of how. And that's exactly the conversation we're having today in virtual worldwide. So when people are like, it's not the same, it's like, we're going to get there. It might not be the same, but can we deliver an amazing, life-changing product? I think we can. And I think that our team is well on the way to doing that right now. Yeah.
For those who say we can't teach over this virtual method, I mean, tell that to Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell Mr. Rogers you can't connect through a screen.
Right. You can't make an impact on the world. Yeah. Well.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of our hour. It's been a great conversation with you, Mr. Quirk. Thank you very much for being our instructor expert for the night. Thank you, everybody who tuned in with us tonight. Please let us know in the comments what you think of our new night, new time. We are sticking with Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central. Going forward, it's going to be every single Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. So our East Coast families, I hope you appreciate the earlier time, and our Midwest families as well. We are going to be next week. We're going to have special guests, Miss Hanson and Mr. Knightsky. We're going to be talking about graduation, transitions, changes, and a lot of other exciting things. So make sure you come right back here to the Facebook private group page or YouTube channel, which is Karate America Community. Subscribe to our channel, like and comment on our videos. Help us get to 100 YouTube subscribers by the end of March. Please, please, please. Our 70% of people that watch and don't subscribe, come on, just a couple of you, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to feel amazing, go out this week. Find somebody in your life, whether you've known them for 40 years or 4 minutes, and inspire them to believe in themselves. It feels incredible. So at Karate America, our purpose is we inspire people to believe in themselves, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for your support. Take care, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.